Thanks for joining us today to discuss success flows and how to categorize and drive key team activities into Tango. So for those of you that are not familiar with me, I'm Cecilia Tevel. I've been here for about 3.5 years and enjoy working with all of you. If you'd like to stay connected or have any questions specifically for me, you can reach out, send me an email, cecilia@tango.com, and I'll be happy to get to know you a little bit better. So for today's agenda, we'll be talking about how to set up success flows into Tango. We'll also be using segments to ask questions about specific type of activity by your team. We can also set up alerts in SuccessPlays to drive proactive processes. And we can start visualizing key segments in reports using the success flow information. So for those of you that are new to Success Flows, it's one of our cool new enhancements to Tango. There is a place where you need to set up the Success Flows to actually start using them, and it's going to be an admin level setting. So within your navigation panel on the left under settings, if you go to Success Flows, you have an ability to now create up to 18, which is really exciting. When we originally rolled this out, it was only 12. So now we have up to 18. So feel free to create your new successful categories. There's a screenshot of some recommended ones that we have seen. Make sure that you have a default. So for us, we have a nurture as a default, but you do want to select one that makes sense for your organization and get started with it. Also, what we want to encourage you to do is to align your success flow categories based on your business processes. And here's some examples of what we have going on. There's a process of onboarding, nurturing, renewal, upsell, escalations. You can also choose an appropriate icon for it that will make sense. These are the ones that we have into Tango for ourselves. But feel free to use icons for other types of success flows that will signify something meaningful for your team. But do think about the specific business process that your organization follows and do create success flows for that particular process type. Now, just a few screenshots before we dive into the live demo. With this new capability of infusing segments and successful information into segments, you can now actually ask questions about when was your last successful type of activity. So for example, if you have a QBR that was longer than, let's say, 6 months ago or 3 months ago, do something about it. So you can actually now look at that information into Tango and ask questions about a specific type of activity that your CSM team has done with the customer. Now, from there, what you want to do is really make sure that you're either setting up alerts or setting up processes. So in this particular case, we are showing a segment that is going to function as an alert. And we're looking at customers that had a QBR, over 180 days ago. So obviously it's been a while, and we do want to make sure that there's another QBR scheduled. So you can notify your team or provide an email address to get notified by. And that is our triggering mechanism. So you can use the triggers here and send an email alert. And something that you can also do is use the segments and then launch into a success play. So you can actually launch specific success plays and assign a process to your team. In this particular case, I'm looking at a renewal success play. Basically, contract renewals in the next 30 days. But there was no renewal conversation in over 60 days. So you really want to make sure that you have that conversation if there's a process in the renewal where the CSM gets involved and actually discusses that portion of the journey with the customer. So you want to automate that. And Success Flows allows you to do that. Now, something that's also very important, you can also do processes and alerts on this. When your customers or when your CSM have not had an executive conversation with your customers. And so for some categorization or segmentation, maybe not every single customer has that type of engagement with you. So if you have a low touch model, maybe that wouldn't apply there. But if you have a higher tier customer that should have an executive conversation at least every 30 days, this is a way for you to get alerted if that hasn't happened, and also create tasks and things like that within Tatango. The next piece of this is kind of visualizing and tracking this information. So once you have built out your SuccessFlow categories, when you go into the executive console under the team section, you can actually see by CSM how everyone is doing. So if you hover over on any of the CSM's kind of coverage of their customers, you can see percentage distribution of the activities that they have done with them. So we can see in this particular case, the CSM is doing 28% onboarding conversations or engagements with customers. 21% is nurturing. There's 15% escalation. So it really allows you to see, what is your CSM team spending the most time on, and maybe reshuffle resources or add more resources, or maybe reprioritize what they need to be doing. And this allows you to do that. Now, the other thing you can do is leverage segments, obviously, as building blocks for some cool visualization via reports. This is a report that I built for looking at the specific engagements. So I looked at escalations, upsells, and executive discussions that have happened within the last 30 days. So I can see by specific CSM what type of activities they have had. So if we're looking at Hen here, looks like he has a lot of escalations in the last 30 days for his customer base. So maybe he needs a little bit more help. Maybe he needs more resources to help address those. So it allows you kind of to visualize that. You can also break it out by contract value, and you can also break it out by the customer type that you have. So, we have in our demo instance, we have two designations, key accounts and commercial accounts. You can see the key accounts have quite a few escalations going on. So it allows you to kind of visualize and see how you're tracking and trending, and maybe reallocate some resources in places where you feel like there's a little bit more need for assistance. So that's reports. So with that, I'm going to actually dive into the demo, and we can take a look at some of these pieces live in the Tatango environment. So when I just log in here, and I wanted to highlight this again, to get started with SuccessFlows, you do want to make sure that you configure these pieces in your settings. And if you are an admin, you can do this. If you are not an admin, you can ask your admin to get this set up if it's not already. But you do want to go into the SuccessFlows piece and either modify the existing SuccessFlows that are already there. You can also add new SuccessFlows. Again, as I mentioned, you have up to 18 now. You can give them a name, come up with pick up a meaningful icon, and then designate it as a default if it makes sense to have it as a default. As I said, the nurture one is the default for us. So that's the setup piece. The next piece of this is really diving into kind of the segmentation and building out some cool processes and asking cool questions. But before I get to that, I do want to highlight some of the pieces, and I'm just going to pick one account to make you familiar with where these information pieces live within Tatango now that you have the SuccessFlows. So a few places. So if we look at the account profile right here, we have last success flow section. You can select up to 5 meaningful success flows or your categories, and look and track what is the last date that particular activity occurred for that particular customer. So it looks like we had a QBR for this customer on August 29th. We had our executive conversation, relationship building conversation on September 27th. So that's really neat. You can actually customize that. There's a little settings wheel that you can use that with. The other areas where you can categorize is when you have your tasks. When you add your tasks, you can actually now designate what type of task it will be. So you can do that manually, and also when you build your SuccessPlays and when you set up campaigns, you can define what type of engagement it will be. And then you can also do this with touch points. So you can go and add a touch point, and you can say, what type of touch point am I having with the customer? Am I having an escalation conversation? Am I doing a relationship building executive conversation? Am I doing some advocacy here? Am I having an upsell conversation? So you have all those capabilities there. And then once you do that, you now have an ability to filter. So if I just want to go into my timeline and look at all of my nurturing activities, I can just filter by that. So you have all the filtering capabilities now available as well. So that's the account profile. And what I showed you earlier, it was in the team console, where you can look at each CSMs, and you can also filter here as well. So if you wanted to zero in on specific type of activities that your CSMs perform, you can do that as well. And you can also hover over and see distribution by percentage of the types of activities that your CSMs have with the customers. And then you can do filtering. So you can do this as well. Just look at all my nurture activities, how many have happened across all of the CSMs on the team. So these are the kind of the new parts and pieces that I wanted to highlight so that you know where to find them. Now, if we go to segments now, and I have some that I've prepped in advance. So if I go to my SuccessFlows folder, I have a few things that I have defined. So an executive discussion is overdue, and that's a segment where basically what I'm doing is asking to show me my last relationship kind of engagement if it was over 30 days ago and my customer is a key account. And where you find this in the editor, you want to go into the section that's called work. So if you expand this work section, the specific condition that I'm using is this one. It's called last success flow. And so when you bring that up, you can click on it and then it'll give you all your options, all the success flow types that you have defined. And here's where you can actually select one, and then you can say, if my last success flow escalation was, and then you have your drop down over, before, after, you have all the dates available. In this particular case, I'm looking at my relationship conversations. If they were over 30 days ago, and this is a key account, then I want to actually have some sort of process, or I want to schedule an alert to go out whenever there's a new customer that meets this criteria. If I want to operationalize this, make sure that the CSM gets a task assigned, I can launch directly into my SuccessPlay from here and define my process for my CSM. So in this case, there hasn't been an executive conversation. It's been too long. I want to make sure that we correct that. And then I can define what type of success flow this will be to apply to my success play. I will call this a relationship one. And then I can quickly preview to make sure that I have the right audience as far as my customers. I will continue. And then this is where I will instruct the CSM team member as to what they need to do. So I'll just say schedule an exec conversation. And then I will select the team member and I will just assign it directly to the success manager. It's going to be assigned by me, or you can select someone else. I can give a priority, normal, high or low, and then due date. So I'll just give them, let's say, 2 days to get this done. And when I click on continue, again, I'm previewing my success play, and I can just launch it. So I can activate, and then the task will get assigned to the CSMs. They will also get a notification, and they will be able to process that through their email and log into Tatango to complete their task. So that's the kind of the operationalization piece of this that the success flows can now power for you. You can do the same thing with anything else. So last QBR, any relatively important process that you want to make sure that happens within a certain time frame. If it hasn't, you can make sure that you're alerted and notified. The other thing that is interesting, and this is what our building blocks were for the report that I showed you earlier. If we build segments and look at specific types of activities that happened. So in this case, I'm building a success flow escalation segment. I want to see all customers that have had an escalation in the last 30 days. Looks like I have just one, which is good. And then I can do the same thing with all the others. So then I'm looking at my nurture one. How many customers have had a nurture activity in the last 30 days? And similarly, repeat this for all the other relevant ones that are important for me to monitor. This one is a training one. And then I have the upsell one. And so what I can do after I have built these segments, I can build a report from them and easily start tracking, and reviewing trends for these types of activities that happen. So what I can show you really quick here is how to do a report like this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on create. And once I have built my segments, I can easily just launch into this editor and start. I can just type the name of the specific segment and it'll pull them up. So these are the ones that I have built and I can just select them. So I'm going to make my escalation one red. I can also edit what appears here. So since I know this is related to my SuccessFlows, I can just remove this first part and just keep the escalation there. And my next one is going to be nurture, and I'm going to make this one green. And then we'll move on to the training. And I'll just leave that the same color. And my last one was my upsell. And I'll remove that, and I'll make my upsell this color. And so now that I have my segments, click on OK. And I can also add components. So this is where I want to slice my data by different components. So I want to slice it by my success manager, and maybe I want to look at contract value, and maybe I want to see what kind of account it is. Is this my commercial account? Is this my key account? Or if you have enterprise, SMB, that kind of things. So, and then these are my components. So the data is not pulling in the demo environment in this particular situation, but what you'll essentially see are going to be the trend lines that I showed you in the screenshot, where you'll have the number of customers that fit into each bucket, and then broken out by your specific team members, by account type, and by contract value. So it's a really nice way to start building and prepping yourself for tracking trends and improvements, hopefully over time, and visualizing and sharing that with your team, maybe your executive team. When you have your team meetings or when you have your executive meetings, you can review this information together as a group. So this is basically the overview on SuccessFlows. I wanted to see if anybody had any questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the question box, and we will take them as they come in. So we do have a question. So what is the best way to track meetings, meeting notes, whether it is for training or QBR escalation? So the best way to track this information would be, for now, if you're leveraging Tatango to document what happens in your meetings, is to document that as a touch point. So when you go to an account profile, and let me pull up an account profile here. Let's go to this one. And so if you go into your timeline, you can actually document your bullet points or a summary of the meeting that you had with a customer. And you can categorize it appropriately by the QBR and put your notes. So you can actually do a bullet point list or a quick summary with what happened with that meeting. So that would be my recommendation for tracking the notes after your meetings. Okay, so we have another question. Okay, so we have a question coming in saying that, so there's a team of the team has hundreds of clients per CSM, and they don't manually track touch points because it would take too long. This customer leverages our BCC2 or CC2 touch points at Tatango when sending emails to customer. Is there a way to apply successful in this manner as well? That's a great question, actually. So via email, what would happen, there's no way to designate it in an email. So I would think that the general category that you have defined in Tatango, it would be tracked like that. So it would be whatever your default is in the SuccessFlow definitions, it would come across as that. So in our particular case, it's a nurture default, and this is what you'll have coming in and tracking as a nurture type of SuccessFlow when you review it later. So someone's requesting if we can show again how to set up an email alert based on SuccessFlow. Okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. So let's go to segments again. And what we can do, I'm just going to build a new one from scratch. So I'm going to build an account segment. And I'm going to look at all my customers that are paying. And in this particular case, I'm going to look at work. And I'm going to select last success flow. And I'm going to select the escalation one. And so if we have an escalation, let's say maybe in the last day or so, and we don't have anyone, let's see if we have some. Let's expand that a little bit to maybe last 14 days, maybe last 7 days, just so that we have something to work with. Nothing. Let's see if we had anything in the last 30 days. Okay, so we have one. So once you have your segment defined, you can use a trigger. That could be the alert. So when you go to the triggers, you just click on add, and then you can specify the email address. So whatever the email address where you would want this alert to go, you specify it here, and then you save it, and then that's what will activate it. So you'll add the trigger email address, you'll activate this, and then that's what will get you to power the alerts. I hope that helps. And the other question is, what's the best way to track emails of meaningful outreaches from CSMs? So this is related to the previous question we discussed. So if you want to track an email and get it logged into Tango, you can CC or BCC is the preferred method. And the email address is called, it's touchpoints@tatango.com. And what that will do, it will automatically log the email content into the account profile under the timeline. So that would be my recommendation if you want to send an email and you want to make sure that the email gets logged in the history within the timeline, is to BCC touchpoints@tatango.com. Okay, so next question. Are only QBR the meetings you can track? What if you just did a check-in or a call? How would you document this on the timeline? Is it always a manual process, or is there an automatic way? That's a great question. So you can actually, so now you have up to 18 different types of engagements that you can track into Tango, and you can categorize the type of conversation that you did with a customer based on that. So if it's a, like a check-in call or just a regular conversation, you can have a nurturing success flow, and anything you really do with a customer is typically nurturing, unless it's something specific. Like a QBR is a really specific type of engagement. A training session is very specific. Maybe if you do a renewal or an upsell conversation, that's separate. But if you're doing your regular maintenance, nurturing activities, checking in, having a discussion, those can be categorized as a nurture. So when you actually log that, you can just specify you were nurturing the customer. So someone's asking if they can move the windows around in an account. So for example, make the timeline window larger and move the key metrics to the side. That's a great question. So at this time, there's no customization as far as repositioning where things are placed on the page. You can, however, decide what data is visible. So on the top navigation panel within the account profile, you can click on, the specific data that you would want to expose, so you can bring it into the top. So in the settings wheel, that actually the admin controls this customization, you can define what data is available. You can also define what metrics are exposed here, but at this point, you cannot reposition the windows or adjust the sizing on them. So great question. So someone's asking, is there any way to add a trigger to a segment for a user segment? I don't see the option to send an email. So that's correct. So currently the functionality for user segments is slightly different than the account segments. And at this point, there's no triggering mechanism available on the user level segment. We hope to have that in the future. So probably the last question we'll have time for. I'm looking to set up customer outreach automation with the campaigns feature. How would you configure that? Off of a success flow or by adding, removing tags when a customer enters the segment? So I would recommend, so the campaign is, so the campaign capability is the email capability. So you can send really targeted email communication to your customer base. I would basically leverage the either you'll use the segmentation, the logic with an editor, so you can use the success flow if you're basing it on the specific success flows, or you can base it on the specific things the customer does or doesn't do within your product. I would not leverage tags for it because the conditions that you define in the campaign would allow you to easily, configure something that's meaningful. And whenever a customer enters the specific segment, they will be qualified for a specific campaign. And if I think we may want to maybe talk through this a little bit more, you can reach out to me directly. And we can figure out what is the best approach for this, depending on the type of campaign that you're looking to launch. I think we probably want to have a conversation around that that's more specific to your needs. Okay, great. Yes, so my preference and recommendation would be leveraging segmentation and the data into Tango like attributes. Tags are more for, just having something visually available to make sure it's identified. And there's other purposes for tags, but I think in your case for campaigns, definitely better to use the editor. So we're all out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining. I hope to see all of you soon. We're just approaching the holiday season. We'll be announcing more webinars for 2017. Again, thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.